In a beautiful, insightful, and brief poem by Wendell Berry, he describes both the gift and the goal of love. That love can become far more than just an emotion that we experience, just a feeling that we have, even more than what we offer our loved ones. That love can become a way of life. As he writes, whatever happens, those who have learned to love one another have made their way to a lasting world and will not leave, whatever happens. That is a powerful statement, that no matter what happens, whether it is celebration or calamity, that we are led to a lasting world, to what truly endures by love. It is not affected by the rise or fall of good fortune. It is not determined by circumstance or condition. It does not cater to whims or wants, because it anchors us in something much deeper, where we are held by the very hands of God. The challenge, though, as it says, is that we are to learn to love one another, to allow love to simply be love. But when we struggle with the struggles of life, too often we are tempted to let the ends corrupt the means. That even if our goal is good, something that we would all aspire to, it can take too long, it can be too hard, we can become too anxious and take things into our own hands. And we are tempted that in pursuing this good goal to use a means that is not. In other words, we cannot shout a whisper, that you can only whisper a whisper. That if the goal is love, then love has to be the means. David is a stark reminder of how dangerous this can be. That he acted selfishly and maliciously. That David, while everybody else is off at battle, summons Bathsheba, which was not an invitation. She did not have a say in the matter. And then, when Bathsheba tells David that she's pregnant, he plots against Uriah, Bathsheba's husband. That he tells Joab, a military commander, to send Uriah to the front lines where the fighting is the worst. And then at an opportune time in the battle, when it is the most perilous, to pull the forces back from around Uriah so he is killed. That David robs Bathsheba of her voice and he terminates Uriah's. It was all an abuse of power. David exposes his clay feet. He is a far cry from the humble shepherd we met just a little while ago in 1 Samuel. That he ignores all of the limitations that are inherent in love. And anytime we ignore those limitations. We are no longer anchored in something deep. It's like the banks of a river. They limit the current of the water, pushing it in one particular direction. But it's those same limits, the banks of the river, that give the river its depth. Psalm 14 is attributed to David, and so oftentimes it is used against those who do not believe in God, that only fools say in their hearts, there is no God, and they do terrible deeds. But before we raise our voices against those who struggle to believe and who are weighed down by doubt, we need to be honest that even those who believe in God can participate in terrible deeds. That perhaps it is fitting that this psalm is attributed to David. Because when it says, only fools in their hearts say there is no God, as Deborah Sokolov writes, that includes those who believe in God, but who act as if God does not exist. As if God does not care how we treat others. But God deeply cares. So much so that the ends cannot justify the means. That we cannot manipulate, coerce, mandate, legislate, or control in the name of love. You can only whisper a whisper. Love is a gift that we receive, and it is a goal that we commit ourselves to. But as you already know, it doesn't always end in success. That sometimes it feels more like sacrifice. That there are days where love will be the cause of such utter celebration, but there are other days where love feels more like a burden that we choose to bear. But like Wendell Berry says, whatever happens, those who have learned to love one another are led to a lasting world and will not leave, no matter what happens. Because it leads us to contentment, peace, and hope. Things that can sustain us, no matter what. When we bought our first house years ago, and we moved in still living out of boxes, trying to memorize our address, we hooked up the washing machine and threw the clothes in for the first load of laundry. But something was wrong. There was no water getting to the washing machine. And since we had a tool shower when we were engaged, I thought I was qualified to fix it. So I went to those tools and I got a pair of pliers. And I pushed and I pulled and nothing budged. So I thought, I need a bigger pair of pliers. And fortunately, a new Lowe's just opened up right outside our new neighborhood. And I drove around the corner 2 minutes and I bought a bigger pair of pliers. And I came home and I pushed and I pulled and it budged a little bit, but it still didn't work. So I thought I need an even bigger pair of pliers. So I drove back to Lowe's and I walked up and down those aisles and I found the biggest pair of pliers I could find. And I came home and this time I was determined and I pushed and I pulled and finally it turned. Or so I thought. It still didn't work. There was no water getting to the washing machine. And that's an essential ingredient. So apparently my tool shower did not qualify me to fix this problem, and I got desperate. I picked up the phone and I called a church member whom I had just met, who was a contractor, to ask for a recommendation for a plumber in town. And he was so kind, and he was so understanding. He did not laugh at me, at least on the phone. And it was Friday afternoon, and he said, I'll have a plumber by tomorrow morning, despite my protest that it was not that urgent. But the plumber got there the next morning, and he went right to work. He pulled the washing machine out, and he cut out the sheetrock in front of the pipes to see what was going on. And as soon as he did, he just smiled, and he motioned for me to come over to take a look. That apparently I was not turning the valve, that I had twisted the entire pipe all the way around, and now it had to be replaced. That we cannot simply push or pull harder to achieve our goals. That if love is the goal, then it has to be the means. As Wendell Berry says, we are called to walk towards the light of the steadfast love of God, which is so bright and so magnificent that sometimes we cannot see where we are going because it's like looking up directly into the sun. So we might become worried and think that we need to take matters into our own hands. But if we can simply trust the light of God's love and continue walking towards it, at some point we will look over our shoulders and we will turn around, and that same love will now illuminate all of the goodness and the grace that has taken place along the way. That we can trust in God's love. And as we learn to love one another, it leads us to what truly matters and to what always endures. Amen.